voice heard here.
The government needs to step up and do its job.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Well, he's the former Australian national nighttime radio king, and he's with me right now. Jim Ball, welcome back to TNT.
Yeah, hi Chris, how are you?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm so glad the farmers are digging in here, the sensible ones, and saying you won't be digging up my property to try and get your wind farms into the grid.
There's an election coming up, Chris. What is it, 15 months away, something like that? But listen, just listening to your editorial there on SCOTUS and that case about Colorado, two of those judges, I can't think of the third one, I can't remember the name, but Kagan, she was an Obama appointee.
A Democrat,
Yeah, and Ketanji Brown was a Biden appointee. Now, even they are saying, they were skewering this guy. They were nailing him to the wall.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
No.
But, just on the Biden report today, pardon me.
Yeah, just let's reset this, because a lot of people may just be joining us. But it came out of Washington. The ludicrous excuses that were presented today by the special counsel, who were looking into Joe Biden taking classified documents which related to Afghanistan, to his home and also to an office. Now, he willfully did it. That's something that we heard from the special counsel. But Jim, he's just too senile to convince a jury, according to the special counsel. The guy runs the United States of America, for heaven's sake.
The irony here is just so damn rich. And there are so many threads to this, Chris. To sum it up, while Biden's circling the drain and about to go through the S-bend, this report, I think, puts Trump on a glide path to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. People are seeing now, this is, and I was thinking about this earlier this afternoon, and the date may not mean much to a lot of people. I don't know how old you are, Chris, but this reminds me of just the feel in the air. It's got the same seismic tectonic shifts, if you like, tectonic plate shifts, as November 11, 1975, when the Governor General sacked Gough Whitlam.
In Australia.
It's got that same feel about it, that this is a dramatic point. This is a major turning point in US politics 9 months out from an election. The Babylon Bee, it summed it up beautifully. It's a satirical magazine, online magazine, but they summed it up beautifully, and it's so true. The irony of this is that, and they put it up this way in their tweet or their X spot. I can't say that. Their X post. That doesn't sound right, but anyway, they said,
get used to it.
Man ruled too senile to stand trial. Man ruled too senile to stand trial, but still fine to run the country.
Sums it up.
Does. He's too senile to stand trial. And as I saw one earlier on, I forget which program it was, he said there are murderers, there are drug dealers, there are rapists in jail because they stood trial. They were capable of standing trial. But this guy's, look, I'm glad that it's turned out this way, that he's not going to trial, because he's going to be there and the Republicans can point at him from now until November. Now, so what do the Democrats do? That's now the question. What do? They can get rid of him, I suppose. But Kamala Harris, seriously? So now the entire country knows that for the last 3 years, they've been conned for the last 3 years. And Biden has just been a decrepit husk. It's been a 3-year loop of weekend at Bernie's. That is literally what it's been. And does America, and it's just hard to get your head around this, does America have any idea just how stupid and dumb and corrupt all this appears to the rest of the world?
Yeah.
I mean, do they understand that? Now, look, just think about this week alone, just this last week. And I've made some bullet points here. The bill went down in flames. The Fannie Willis case is unraveling. The other major case on January 6th, that's starting to look a little bit shaky. All the justices on SCOTUS are really raising skeptical eyebrows about that business. It's been an absolute week. It's been a slow-mo car wreck, but a weekend of karma for others. The world works in mysterious ways. And it's very difficult to distinguish between Putin's Russia, to be honest, and Biden's America because, well, nothing quite says banana republic like attempting to charge your opponent for the same crimes you've committed.
Yeah.
And then put him in jail so he can't run.
Yeah. And then stand on a podium at every donation fundraiser you can and talk about the preservation of democracy, Jim.
Yes, they rabbit on about this. We're preserving democracy. And look, this is that old line from the Vietnam War. We have to destroy the village to save the village. They think that line is going to work. But this, in the report, I'll just read this here. You used the word willfully earlier. And of course, that means knowing exactly what you're doing is wrong.
Mm.
That's what it means. That you not just doing it. Oh, was that wrong? I didn't realize. You know it's wrong. Anyway, he said in the report, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with poor memory. And look, I've got some more stuff here on that. But anyway, the papers are going to be full of this tomorrow.
Yeah. But you summed it up from your source. Too senile to be charged, but not senile
qualified
enough to
run the country, and too demented and fragile to stand trial in front of a jury of his peers. He's obviously too demented and fragile to run the country. And remember, Chris, this DC jury for Trump, from a jury pool that voted 95% for Democrat, 5% for Republican. DC meaning Democrat Central. That's pretty much what it means. So if people ever needed that America's got a two-tier justice system, this should get them across the line. I
want to raise the border mess if I can before we go any
please.
further. This week we had even Mayor Eric Adams, the Democratic mayor in New York, blaming Biden for the flood of illegals, drowning his city and others in the US. He was told to fix it for the sake of the cities and for the sake of people across the nation.
Well, the Democrat Party and the media, their media lackeys, they've claimed for years that, and I've heard some great compilation, those mashup tapes of Biden and Mayorkas and all the media talking heads saying the border is secure, the border is secure. But of course, everyone knows that. I mean, this is the greatest attempt at gaslighting we've ever seen. People can see it on their nightly television, drone shots. What did we say the other day? 360,000 in December alone came across the border. And the border bill, well, that was a dog. What that was about, it's very, very simple. It's gone down, so and it may come back. They were attempting to get the Republicans' fingerprints on that bill, so it would then defuse it as a bomb going into the election. The Republicans couldn't use it because the Democrats would say, well, you guys voted for it. That's what it was all. It was all about trying to inveigle and cajole the Republicans into signing off on the border plan.
Yeah.
In an endeavor to, as I said, implicate them and get their fingerprints on their criminal activity. That's what it was. It's so simple. I mean, and thank God it went down. I was a bit concerned there. I thought, surely people can't see that they can see through this and understand it for what it is.
It was funny. It was the only time this week that I've seen Joe Biden actually look rather sound and reliable when he was fighting on this issue. It's obviously something that he was very, very keen on. But anyway,
it was real rope-a-dope entrapment stuff, and an attempt to make them co-conspirators and implicate them in their crime.
Yeah,
That's what it was all about. And I had a whole lot of other points on that. But anyway, let's move along.
Yeah, I've got to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about a lack of leadership, not just in Australia, but right around the world. I think it's glaringly obvious now. We'll get to Jim Ball in just a second, right here on TNT. I've got Jim Ball with me, and we want to talk about what's happening in Australia. I want to go to Canberra now, Jim, and you've spotted something that was exclaimed or said in parliamentary question time yesterday. The PM made reference to our poor social harmony. Have a listen to this.
It's a serious question in the context of the worst social disharmony that I have seen, not just in my time in politics, but in my time that I've been alive in this country. It shouldn't be weaponised. I condemn totally any form of anti-Semitism, including the comments by my local member, the member for Newtown, whose comments about tentacles with regard to the Jewish community, I find offensive. I find it had its origins in anti-Semitism, and I condemn it unequivocally. Just as I condemn forms of that I have seen. Islamophobic comments and behaviour as well.
Now, we're talking about a lack of social harmony. He raised the anti-Semitism comment from the member for Newtown, etc. But I got to say, you know, before you actually get onto this subject deeply, I think he has to take some responsibility for dividing Australia and creating a lack of social harmony with what he did with The Voice, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is a classic case of the arsonist turning up as fireman. Like he lights the fire and turns up to hose it down. And you're right. I mean, and that business about Jewish tentacles. What I couldn't understand, as I think I said through the break, I had to read the story 2 or 3 times because this happened in the New South Wales Parliament, but the story was badly written, badly constructed. It kind of was all over the place and took me for a while to work it out. He was referring to an event that happened in the New South Wales Parliament by a Green MP, Leong, I think her name is, Jenny Leong, in New South Wales. But yeah, he's the arsonist turning up as fireman. And there is social disharmony, no doubt about that, driven to a large extent by social media. But The Voice was a classic case of social disharmony or the potential to cause division. And it would have, because there'd be a group of people that had access to ears embedded in the Constitution that the average Australian wouldn't have access to.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, but okay, we just spoke about America and the division over theirs. But here's the curious one. I don't know if you read Janet Albrechtson on Wednesday. It was about New Zealand.
No, I didn't read. I saw the article. I didn't read it.
Have they got major problems there? Talk about division. So yes, there is social disharmony. There always will be. Social media tends to pour fuel on the fire, but it's not as bad as America because we don't have the black slave connection, that nexus, and it's not as bad as New Zealand is now because that is really worth getting hold of Albrechtson's column. It's really worth having a read of. Okay, he's the architect of the class warfare and the division. That's basically the bottom line. Yep.
Turning up to the fire. I like that. Now, I've got to say, and you raised this with me earlier today, you wanted to talk about it, and I have mentioned it sparsely on my various programs here because there are so many examples of it, but the lack of really good leadership in the world. We talk, extensively about Joe Biden and the fact that, we discovered today that they set him off straight after those horrific attacks on Israel on October 7. They set him off for 2 days to answer questions about these secret documents. I'm sure that could have been put off for another week, and they would have understood that it had to be put off. But no, they toddled him off. So that's how bad leadership is. And what we've also seen is more than at any time before, Jim, leaders using the polls as their Bible and not having the guts to say, no, you won't like what I'm about to do, but I have faith in my own ability to explain to you why I had to do it. They don't do this anymore.
Well, that's why they hate Trump, because Trump said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what's got to be done. There is a cancer, there is a swamp, and the swamp's got to be drained. End of. You look around, whether it be Europe, well, right across, everyone's got their panties in a twist. There are a bunch of panty waists. Britain, it's just incredible what's going on in these places. They will not stand up for what they're supposed to believe in. Europe is finished. Britain is finished. I mean, it's put it this way, it's on life support.
I think Rishi Sunak is the weakest leader of that country I've ever seen.
Yep. And so was David Cameron and all. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was the last one they had that was any good at all. Across Europe, you had Angela Merkel. She was the one responsible for the invasion from North Africa. But I was just thinking earlier this week about the American leadership and just how weak it is. Listen to this litany of stuff that I've written down. Go back to, okay, you had the First World War, Second World War, then you had was it Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson? So Vietnam was a disaster for America. That was like Afghanistan, at the end of the Afghanistan withdrawal. In 1979, you had the Iran hostage crisis under Carter. Carter did SFA. Did not put in a helicopter to go and rescue them. Helicopter crashed and did nothing. It was only when Reagan came in, they understood. Reagan meant business. And I think it was the day after he was inaugurated. Oh, here are your hostages back. They knew right? 1996, you had the bombing of Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia, 19 US soldiers killed. America did nothing. Attacks on US embassies in 98 in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in Africa. 224 people died in the blasts, including 12 Americans, 4,500 people wounded, nothing. October 2000, Al-Qaeda blasted a 40-foot hole in the side of the USS Cole at the port of Aden in Yemen, killing 17 US soldiers and injuring another 40. Nothing happened. Then you have 2001. And so in all of those cases, Democrat leaders, and they did nothing about any of that. They just seemed to love getting their face punched in.
Yeah.
2001, 8 months into the Bush term, you have the plot that was developed under Clinton by Al-Qaeda, and that was the end of that. That was into Afghanistan they went. Under Obama and Hillary Clinton, there was the 2012 embassy attack in Benghazi, and Obama did nothing. 12 years on, and Libya is still a basket case.
Yeah.
Then there was the Arab Spring and the overthrow of Mubarak in Egypt. Again, Obama, he was there, nothing. There was the first clown car Iran deal with pallet loads of dollar bills, cash money, trying to thinking they could somehow do some deal with Tehran and allow them to develop fissile material. I never quite, and so Trump wound that back and said, not on my watch. Biden's brought it back. And then what was the other one I had? Oh, yes, Obama warned Russia that getting into Syria would be a red line for him. Russia did, and Obama did nothing.
Yeah.
Under Trump, all quiet on the Western Front, as they say. See, what the difference is, like Reagan, Trump projected peace through strength, carried a big stick. He subscribed to the doctrine of F around and find out. And they knew it.
Yeah.
But he projected what they call strategic ambiguity.
Yeah.
And that kept China, and along with sanctions, that kept China in check, that kept Iran in check, that kept Russia in check, and North Korea. He even had a meeting with North Korea, you may remember, kept them all in check. They did nothing.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between weak leadership and Reagan and Trump. They just knew not to deal with not to get involved with these guys because they would destroy them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see whether Trump can do it all again if he gets back into the White House.
Oh, I think so.
I think so.
This time round, he knows where the bodies are buried.
Yeah. And that's one of the things in his favour come election day, because people know what he's capable of internationally, and
That's
he has
right.
a good record as president in that regard. I've got to run. I've got Pauline
Sure.
Hanson on the other line, Jim. Great to have you on. Have a terrific weekend.
Give my regards to the lady.
Okay,
Pauline,
will do.
I mean.
Good
See you
on you,
later.
Jim. Thank
Okay,
you very
bye.
much.
Thanks,
Jim
Chris.
Ball from Australia, former nighttime radio king. Good to have him on. We'll catch up with him next Friday as well.
Clashing on the controversies.
It's a woke society, and I am fed up with it.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
I bet the former Australian national talkback radio announcer Jim Ball had a few hundreds and thousands on his bread from time to time, and you would have had ham and cheese sandwiches as well, and maybe a few other bad things.
Chris, what was the ham and cheese? What was the reason you didn't mention?
No, the story didn't mention it. I couldn't find out. I was going to go to the original story from Western Australia, but my Western Australian subscription has run out, so I couldn't get there. I don't know.
But as you said, the lunchbox and Nazis, being the kind of guy I am, I would simply defy. I would send the kids to school with sausage rolls, meat pies, hundreds
Yes.
and thousands, the lot, just to stick it up them.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
the whole thing. And one of the things I have learnt from listening to the better half teach other people what they should be eating is that, having a treat from time to time is a damn good thing for your mindset. And if you can keep your mindset in check and not crave things that you can't have, you might actually be able to lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. Just listening to you talking about the Met in Britain reminded me, I think it was last week, Mark Stein. Are you familiar with Mark Stein in the US? I think he's
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah.
He was taken to court by Michael Mann. Michael Mann is the man who developed the phony hockey stick graft to make things appear worse than they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's a fraud for a start. But he took I forget what it was about, but he took Stein to court, and there was one part of the judgment was a penalty of $1,000. The next bit, $1 million against Stein.
Yeah.
So he's not well. He's
I could just imagine.
Seriously, he attended court in a wheelchair. He couldn't afford a lawyer. He had to defend himself. He's had really serious heart problems, multiple events. So yeah, it's not good. And of course, in Australia, we've got our own bureau with their homogenisation of temperatures. I saw one the other day. It came up on my usual Facebook feed that I posted ages ago, and I think it was Burke or somewhere like that. It was 125 degrees Fahrenheit, hottest day ever, and that had been homogenized down to 112 or 110. It's all to make today's weather look warmer than it actually is.
Leave us alone.
Comparatively.
Why don't they tell us the truth? Is it because the people who are working in these kind of agencies are people who are, have drunk the green cordial and believe that we can change the temperature of the planet?
Well, yes. And there's a book, I was going to mention this later, but there's a book out, it's in America, but the same thing happens everywhere. It's called Big Intel. And this is about how the CIA and the FBI went from Cold War heroes to deep state villains. The same thing has happened in bureaucracies around the world. When they talk about the deep state, they're not talking about a secret government. They're talking about the bureaucracy and the people in it that can't be fired. And they just ignore their political masters. Your guy we saw that under Trump, but you see it all the time. The political masters might vote on something, but the bureaucrats will drag their feet or not do it at all, just pure defiance. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing. They've drunk the Kool-Aid, as they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the UK, for them to say what they say, and they say it every time there's a natural disaster, but they don't back it up. And when they're forced to back it up, the only information they have contradicts exactly what they're saying. Like, oh, what hypocrites. Yeah. Let's talk about power and energy for a second. And we know, and for those listening outside of Australia, there is an infatuation and an arrogance and an ignorance in Australia by the Labor government to think that we can provide baseload power with purely renewable energy. It's never been done before in the world, but for some reason the current government thinks it can be done. But of course, the smart minds know what the future is about, and the future is in terms of baseload power that can be reliable and doesn't have CO2. If that rocks your boat, if that floats your boat, well, it's nuclear. And the wonderful thing about nuclear, as opposed to renewables, we don't have to replicate transmission lines.
That's right.
And we could, if you wanted to take your coal-fired plant down, if that, as I say, floats your boat, and you hate coal and you want to demonize it, well, you could put a nuclear reactor on these sites, and that is a major story put together today in the Australian newspaper. And I'm so glad that it was out there in print.
Yep. Look, just before I go to that, for years, I have been quietly saying to myself, bring on the blackouts. The more the better, the sooner the better, so we can get a foretaste of what's to be expected.
Yeah.
Now, we had that big storm in Melbourne, so unrelated, it was a storm, so I got that. 530 homes without power. That's a good thing. I know it's not if you're in the middle of it, but people might go, holy hell. if this is what it's like after a storm, what's it going to be like when it's found that the renewables can't handle the load? Now, as I say, that was just a storm. Now, Wednesday, we had businesses saying to Victorian government that we're thinking of leaving. We may well leave, take our business to Queensland or somewhere else. But it doesn't matter where you go. Most states have got similar policies. And I think it's been obvious to everyone for many, many years, a couple of decades at least, with the closure of various power stations, that this was going to happen. Now,
Yes.
here's some numbers from today's story in the Australian. We had Liddell Power Station closed down last year, a Raring Power Station down next year. So that's 5 megawatts out of the system in the space of just 3 years. 12 power stations have been decommissioned so far for a total of 7,140 megawatts. And with the closure of Raring next year, that'll bring it to 9,165 megawatts of coal-fired power. That is, in anyone's language, that is energy vandalism.
Yeah.
There's no way in the world. And they'll say on a good day, renewables can deliver a lot of power, probably can. But the thing is,
Which day?
well, that's the point. It's variable and unreliable. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
you
they
do
cost a
have-
hell of a lot to build and a hell of a lot to get their kind of power to the grid.
Yep.
And thirdly, there was a story today, and I'll get it for you before we finish our segment, where a group of wind turbines lasted 12 years, Jim.
So you've got to bury them or whatever, and got to get new ones. And I think solar panels also, they have, I don't know what their life is, but it's not long. It's comparatively to just a power station grinding. But so on top of all of this energy vandalism, as you pointed out, we've got up to, they're talking about if they want to put out all the renewables that they are going to need in Victoria, that's going to take 70% of available agricultural land in Victoria.
70% of
that's
land with a turbine. They're crackers.
Let that sink in. The thing is that was up on the website. I'm not sure which government website, and it mysteriously disappeared. But they were there. I thought it was a typo, but no. Let me have a look here. Analysis indicates that to meet net zero targets using onshore renewables could require up to 70% of Victoria's agricultural land to host wind and solar farms.
And it's only a preliminary target, Jim. It's only a preliminary target.
But this is an interesting number too. If you take the 15 active coal-fired power stations in Australia today, they cover just short of 2,000 hectares. That's the footprint. Now visualize this against the footprint of renewables of 101,500 hectares. So 2,000 over here and 101,000 over there. That's the difference. But all is not lost, Chris.
Wow.
Now, there's been some indications that Dutton and the Libs are going to take nuclear to the next election.
Good.
I suggested this prior to the last election as a point of difference.
Yep.
People's electricity bills are coming in. They know there's trouble looming on the road up ahead.
Yep.
And they're looking for, and CO2 is the problem, so they say. Anyway, let's assume that they're correct. The only answer to that is nuclear. And if you're not talking nuclear, you shouldn't be in the debate. You shouldn't be in the room.
You shouldn't. Absolutely. You should not. It is farcical that we don't join the other 40 countries in the world looking very closely at this. There should be a task force set up looking closely and reporting to government.
And the thing is, Chris, that as you pointed out, if you put nuclear, these little modular jobs on existing power station sites, they can use they can plug straight into the grid.
Yeah.
And these things I interviewed a chap when I was on, I took 12 months out of GB, went to TUE. A guy called, the name of the book is Prescription for the Planet, and I can't think of the author's name. He went into the history of these things. This is back in 2008, 2007, 2008.
Right.
And so I've still got the book. I've been across this stuff for a hell of a long time. Dutton pointed out there's something like 20 countries similar to Australia, which have a nuclear industry, or they're committed to having one. And Australia is the only one that doesn't have
just
policy of that nature.
Uh,
So I think this is a game changer. It's a hackneyed phrase, I know, but this single policy can win the Libs of the election. The people are now, dare I say it, plugged into the energy debate because they see it every few months when it comes via the letterbox. Meanwhile, you've got Albo. He's over here. He's talking about, for Liddell, a big battery.
Yeah.
Now, a battery, it'll
never
only
ready.
service a couple of hundred houses, maybe a couple of thousand, and for a couple of hours. I mean, I had one when I used to have a tower, a computer tower. I had a one of those big plug-in batteries, so that if the power went down, you'd know, and you could shut down everything you were doing in an orderly fashion instead of having a blackout. But that battery only lasted for maybe an hour, if that. But it was enough to get you for you to shut things down. So, but that's what our Albo is proposing for the Liddell site.
He's got no idea.
None, absolutely.
No. I've got to take a break, mate. I'm just behind.
Sure.
I found that story about the 12-year lifespan. We'll get to that right after the break
sure.
on TNT.
You are about to hear
Today's news talk and the voice of freedom.
That's what this country's all about.
TNT Radio.
Now, TNT, as you may know, is an independent global news talk station that does what others, well, they only say what they want to do or will do. We do it. TNT is a live radio and television broadcaster that simply tells the truth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No one in the world does what we do. That's the truth. Crisscrossing the globe, providing credible news and opinion all day and all night. In 2.5 years, that's all we've been open and broadcasting for, TNT has become a credible and exciting platform with brilliant hosts and staff. It's a critical time, and we must continue to call out the misinformation and propaganda from mainstream media and their powerful sponsors. We are now appealing to our many friends and supporters from right around the world who are listening and watching to go to tntradio.live and make a small donation to TNT while we seek the right investors to continue our important mission. We have some wonderfully generous donors from around the world who keep us afloat, and that's doing well. But we can do with some small additions, and that's why we've put out this call today. It's all part of bringing you something that no other broadcaster does on TNT. Okay, let's get back to Jim Ball. Jim, I found that story, and this is the stupid part of our understanding of renewables. The fact that there'll be 20 years, 25 years, then we replace them. Even that is appalling in terms of an investment, especially when you consider that nuclear reactors can last anything around 80 years or more. But the story that I had, let me just get it up for you and press the right buttons. Here it is. This is from John Lee Pettymore on Twitter, and it's about a Minnesota wind farm. Documents filed by Xcel Energy, writes John Lee Pettymore, for its Nobles wind facility in Minnesota show that of the 134 turbines they had, they cost to decommission $85 million just to get rid of them, $85 million to get rid of. Then they had to refurbish them after only 12 years, and that cost was $204 million. And that is from what's called Green Energy. That's the source, Green Energy, which is an industry newsletter. But 134 turbines, they lasted 12 years. To get rid of them, 85,000. To refurbish them, 204, sorry, I said million, I should be million. 85 million and then 204 to refurbish it. Yeah. It is just an absolute joke.
As I've said all along, Chris, renewables are a boutique option. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
They're okay to have, but don't rely on them.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Okay, two stories I want to get to, and I may have to get to news very shortly, but Clementine Ford, this terribly feisty, nasty, anti-Semitic woman, is just a shocker. And she's talking today, she's defended herself and saying that when she outed these Jewish followers who were on a WhatsApp group, she wasn't being anti-Semitic, despite the fact that they were just Jewish, and for that they had to pay because she put their private details on, online, private details that led to at least one of them being threatened. But Clementine Ford, what are your thoughts on her, mate? Because she seems to be still the darling of the media. They keep giving her work. And then the Opera House has asked her to host an event coming up soon. Can you believe that?
Well, no, but I do. I mean, yes, but no. I don't want to believe it, but if it's true, I'll come to her disclaimer that she's not anti-Semitic in just a moment. As they say, I've got the receipts that prove the exact opposite. But I don't think, Chris, in our collective lifetimes, I can recall such a loud, obnoxious, odious, vile figure as Clementine Ford. She's a shocker. And why you would select her to co-create or co-curate anything, which is what you were talking about, that Opera House thing, I don't know why you would do that. Her mission, her, I don't know, guiding principle, if you like, is to outrage and insult. That's because that's what she does. There's no great piercing intellect inside that head at all. She just shoots off the mouth. In fact, the only way she generates a headline or a story of any sort is not because of any particular intellectual observation or insight, but it's purely on the basis of the gratuitous insults that she hurls at anyone. I mean, put it this way, in another life, she would have been in the French Revolution. She would have been a Jacobin. They were the ones that totally overturned French society.
Yeah.
That's what she would have been the one of the Jacobins.
Yeah.
She's been described as a serial misandrist, that is a man hater. She's a spawn of the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, The Drum on the ABC. That's the kind of milieu, the kind of circles in which she did her gender studies. Got to mention that. She studied gender at Adelaide University. Probably explains the misandry. We're dealing with a very dark, very unwell human being, I think.
A woman who can say that it's a pity that more men didn't die during COVID-19 has got a real psychological problem.
Oh, yes, she does. And we're giving her exactly what she wants just by talking about it. She's getting, that's exactly it. But on this particular subject of doxing 600 Jewish creatives, and by doxing, as you well know, that means putting out their private information, name, address, email, phone number. Why would you do that unless you didn't mean for somebody to go there and intimidate and create problems for them, for those people? And that other pond scum that was on the front page of the Australian yesterday, Tuit Rosenberg, Z Maslin, good on the Australian for outing them, and Matt Chun. They all feel quite comfortable in their position. I don't know how you can be a part of a society that talks as tolerance and diversity and inclusion and behave like that. I don't understand.
Well said.
Let me get back to, she says she's not an anti-Semite. Okay, check Claire Lehman in the Australian today. On her social media, this is from Lehman's story or column, on her social media accounts and Substack newsletter, Ford amplifies Islamist rhetoric that portrays Israel as an occupied territory since 1947. On her Instagram account, there's a video of Ford speaking softly in dark lighting in front of her phone camera about Zionist ideology. Zionist is a euphemism, of course. This is it. They use the word Zionist and they say, oh, but I'm not anti-Semitism. It's not even half smart, fast and loose with the English language. And there she is on this this video, stating there are not enough babies in the world who could be bombed to satisfy Israel. Got that? On her Substack account this week, Ford talks of children being ritually maimed and disabled by Israel. Now, throughout her social media posts, she describes Zionists, and notice again, that's the euphemism, but they use to disguise her anti-Semitism. She describes them as monsters, sadists, ghouls, Israel as disgusting, evil, and a disgusting, evil oppression machine. But she's not anti-Semitic, Chris.
No, not at all. Not at all. You
How
proved
could we
your
get
point.
it so wrong?
I've got to take a quick break. I'll come back with you, Jim. I've got to go to the newsroom for a news update on TNT.
Now, TNT Radio News.
You are completely obsessed with
Breaking news.
Matt Boyland here with a look at your TNT headlines. Prolific pedophiles convicted of the most heinous crimes against infants and preteen children could be executed in the US state of Idaho under a new bill passed by House officials. Russian President Vladimir Putin's told the world that his country is close to developing vaccines to treat cancer. And the Kremlin has rejected wild reports out of the US, claiming Russia is planning on deploying nuclear weapons in space.
We're the pinup boys and poster girls for free speech. We just don't look as impressive as Vladimir Putin shirtless on a horse. Yeah, 24/7, 365. We never stop sifting fact from fiction, misinformation from the truth, from government overreach to the latest on mandates, big tech censorship to propaganda gone mad. Listen to TNT Radio and get the news and views direct from our expert presenters and commentators anywhere you go. Ask Alexa or Google to play TNT Radio or download the TNT Radio app for free from the App Store or Google Play. Today's News Talk. This is TNT Radio.
As I mentioned, TNT does rely on donors, and we've got some terrific donors. We've got to be careful about who donates to this network, which is a process that you've got to go through. But in terms of donations from our listeners and our viewers, very much invited. You can go to our website, and you can find on our website, you can easily navigate exactly how to donate. I think there's a donate button there on the front page. But Chimp Watch on the chat box says, "Shall do, Chris. I will donate a small amount. TNT must exist." Thank you very much for your support. Jim Ball, one last question. I want to talk about diversity, equity and inclusion. I talk about it in the context of the Biden administration almost every week. There are numerous examples of where people should have been employed for positions that weren't because they weren't a particular colour or didn't have the disadvantage that others who got the job had. We don't call it DEI in Australia, but the same kind of thing is contaminating society right around the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the pandemic virus, if you like, of 2024 and into the future. The one that caught my eye this week, you would have seen it as well in the Australian. They're talking about Australian judges now being assessed and promoted on the basis of their culture and that kind of thing. And merit, they specifically mention that merit will be downgraded. Now, I'm afraid if I'm in front of a judge, I want somebody with ability and skill and somebody who can read the room. Merit should be the primary consideration. And we got something going on there.
We got someone else we can hear in the background. That's okay. We'll take that off air.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I can beg your pardon. Was that going to air? No, I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Probably.
So anyway, like in America, you've just had the president of Harvard University, a plagiarist who was promoted on the basis of DEI. She was the diversity hire.
Yeah.
In the White House, you've got several of them, but one of them is the talking head for the president, the media talking head, Jean-Pierre, Karen Jean-Pierre. That's another one. But the biggie is, and this is what I'm leading up to here, just give me a second. The biggie is Kamala Harris. Now, after the travails of Biden last week, they're in a bind. Next in line is Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do? Now, Biden went to the election in 2020, months out from the election, said, my vice president will be female and a woman of color. All right, tick that box. Terrific.
Despite the fact, I might add, that during the playoffs, the political playoffs, she was the first one to be ejected.
That's right, she was. Yeah, she in Iowa or wherever it was. That's right. She and Biden wasn't meant to. He was out as well until James Clyburn, I think it is, came in and did some backroom deal and got Biden in there. And he's been a puppet for the Obama administration, Mark II or III or whatever it is. But so here they are. They've got this marriage made in hell, all because of DEI. That's the bottom line. She's there. There's nothing they can do about it. They will do something. They're brutal. They're savage. They're going to get rid of her whether it's money or whatever, I have no idea. But they, at the moment at least, are stuck with her and stuck with him, and they deserve each other. The American people don't.
Put it perfectly.
Yeah.
They deserve each other.
Yeah.
Nicely said. You have a great weekend, Jim Ball, and
Thanks,
we'll
Chris.
catch up next Friday.
Next
hopefully.
Friday, we'll do it again.
Good on you, mate. Thank you. There you go. The politically incorrect, pulls no punches. Jim Ball from Sydney. Speaking with him again on Friday. That's what we do each and every week. All right. I want to get to my good friend and colleague now, I guess you'd call him, now that he comes on regularly on Friday on this program. He's the Southern Hemisphere's most politically incorrect commentator, former national nighttime talkback radio host, Jim Ball. Welcome back to TNT.
Yeah, hi, Chris. Yeah, only the Southern Hemisphere. Actually, I thought it was the world.
The world, the universe.
That's better. Look, I got to tell you, that last hour with your chap about AI, unbelievable. I kind of came in late. Was he talking about the new Google Gemini? Because that's
no, he wasn't. No, basically AI being used to surveil Americans.
Yeah, I urge everyone to go on and listen to Ben Shapiro's podcast from this morning, talking about Gemini. It will scare the bejesus out of you. Yeah. What Google are now up to. You Google something like the Pope and give me an image of the Pope, and he's a black man. Give me an image of the average family, and it's anything but the average family. Right. Give me an image of a 17th century French king, and it's a black man or a coloured man.
So AI is not fact. AI is engineered by human beings who
the people programming
don't abide by the facts.
Are inputting their own biases and prejudice into it.
Isn't that interesting?
We thought it was really funny when Disney decided they'd remake, what was it, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs with a coloured woman and 7 average dudes, normal height. They weren't mucking around. That's what. Anyway, go to Ben Shapiro, have a listen to his podcast from today. And just George Papadopoulos, I'm like you, I've heard him interviewed many times. His wife is good value. Let's just get this on the record. Alexander Downer is a spiv. You should have seen what he did, and this was on Four Corners, what he did to Timor, East Timor. Mm. We were negotiating the oil fields and the gas. What they didn't know was we were spying on them in the hotel rooms, pardon me, as they were negotiating. All at the behest of Alexander Downer. The guy's a grub. Simple, and as simple as that.
That's fascinating.
And one other thing, Chris, you're just on that topic of big intel and all the rest of it. The book I mentioned last week is Big Intel. There was an interview earlier this week. I normally don't watch things. People send me stuff all the time. This was an hour. And I started to watch it and I just couldn't stop. It was an interview, Tucker Carlson and a guy called Mike Benz, B-E-N-Z, as in Mercedes-Benz. Oh, my God. You have no idea how deep this is. Mm. And universal, like across the world. It is not just Washington. It's across the world, as you saw with Papadopoulos and Trump and the Five Eyes. Mm. They're all in on it. Mm. It's shocking. It's terrible.
They go beyond what presidents and prime ministers are allowed to do with the powers that they have. They don't take any notice of national or international law. They are a law unto themselves, Jim.
Well, Chris, the point Benz makes, you got to, when you hear these people talking about saving our democracy, and we all think, oh, they mean all of us, our democracy. No, they don't mean that. They mean their democracy. You know how we talk about, they used to call it our ABC, and we used to say, oh, you mean their ABC? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the deep state operatives. It's all the intel agencies. It's their democracy across the world and how they want it set up. So when you hear that word, our democracy, it's not what we think it means.
Yeah, it's their version of the truth.
But I urge people to listen to both of those.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you for the advice. Thank you for the tip. Now, less than 250 days from the Queensland election, and despite raging criticism from voters over regional crime, which has been a hot topic for about 2.5 years, today's Yukon poll seems to belie Labor's problems, Jim. New Premier Stephen Miles has somehow drawn level with the LMP. What does it all tell you? Can Labor regain power, even under Palaszczuk's right-hand man?
Well, yeah, you'd think people would be, what would you say, burnt out, a bit of palaszczuk fatigue, a bit of labour fatigue.
Yeah.
Mind you, this is, 250 days out. I think it's October the 26th.
Yep.
So, look, anything can and probably will go wrong for both parties. They'll have their ups and their downs. This is one poll.
Mm.
And if Labor gets this, it'll be like a Stephen Bradbury win. Well, it won't, not quite, but you, as I said, you would think there'd be a certain amount of Palaszczuk and Labor fatigue. This will be their fourth win since Campbell Newman famously crashed and burned, and that was back on 2013, I think it was, and he went out in a blaze of glory. One term. I think he had the right ideas. Problem was he tried to implement them in one hit and thought, well, I'll get this over and done with. And the people said, no, thank you. And there we go.
See, I think David Crisafulli, the opposition leader, is pressing all the right buttons. He's not being overexposed. He's not underexposed. He's there at the right time. I think he's doing a good job. Opposition leaders, though, don't win elections.
I just hope they don't end up like the Victorian Liberal Party, where they just have this rotation of duds. The Liberal Party in Victoria, I hate to say they deserve everything they get, but, the way they treated Moira Deeming, for example, it's just shocking. It's just, they talk about their inability to read the room. I've just made a note here. They've got, what do they call it? Optional preferential up there. So it's not compulsory. No. So that may, and you've got, and at the moment, I think it's 49-51 in favour of the Liberal National Party, two-party preferred, and the just straight down the line Lib Labor, it's 50-50. So it's a line ball thing. At least they're in the game. They're on the field. Which is
Miles is so green, and I don't know how that goes down in Queensland. I'm not in Queensland, but he was out today off the back of this poll, I think, announcing a new battery.
Yeah, battery. That's right. Yeah. Look, One Nation is on 6.6%, and you got Bob Catter on 3%. So how that factors into all of this, I don't know. I mean, I don't sort of wake up every morning thinking, gee, I've got to check the polls in Queensland. I've really got to work at maintaining an interest.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Still on youth crime, a huge wake-up call to the judiciary in the Northern Territory. And, of course, it's crime-plagued, that territory in Australia. Federal Labor MP and Indigenous woman, I might add, it's important to note, Marion Scrimgeour, has blasted magistrates in the territory who, she says, wrongly treat criminal minors as little angels. Maybe a little more tough love is what's required.
Look, what we're talking about here, and I know we may get to it in the Sydney Morning Herald wrote this piece about COVID, but there's a link between the two. This is not just about crimes, but more to the point, kids in danger and setting them up for failure in years to come, a life of crime and perhaps an early death. So with that on board, allow me to live up to your rap about politically
incorrect, Jim, come on.
So look, the issue at the heart of all of this, and nobody wants to mention the elephant in the room, I'm about to do it. People have become so intimidated by the stolen children narrative that the idea of removing kids is just politically fraught. Can't be done, can't mention it. Now, it's got to be remembered, and let me just go to that whole thing. They put up their best cases to court. Not a single case in court was found, and these were like the best ones I can think of are a couple, Peter Gunner and Lorna Cabillo. They were found by the court not to be stolen. Peter Gunner was rescued off a garbage tip, right? They were rescued. So yes, kids were removed, but they're not stolen. But this is the problem. Removed, yes, but stolen, most definitely not. And I mean, if you're going to steal something, for what purpose? For what? Who's going to benefit from stealing something? But this is what happens when the left control a narrative. They cherry pick their words very carefully. The word stolen in America, the word insurrection. They have a situation. How can we milk this politically? They pick a word, stolen, insurrection, and there it is. That's And that's
when we said sorry to the stolen generation, there was no room in that apology for the tabulating or the tabling of the other truth, which is the fact that a huge number of young kids who were taken away from dysfunctional families ended up leading wonderfully safe, productive, and academically successful lives.
That's exactly right. Now, look, I wrote something back in the day, and I just went back and I keep all this stuff. I don't know why, but anyway, I'm glad I do. The whole stolen generation narrative has got elements of Orwell, Goebbels, and Marx. Here they are. This is what I wrote way back, maybe 20 years ago. It's Orwellian in so much that the underlying idea was to flip the original good intention to remove children from out of harm's way and label it bad. But they did that. It was Marxist in so much as the intention was to undermine the confidence and tarnish and shame the people's belief in the nation, that we're just no good, we're thieves, we steal children. And Goebbels, in so much as it's a monstrous and repeated lie, often enough, it becomes the truth. Now, I've got here from 1959, okay? Mm-hmm. You tell me if this sounds like people intent on stealing children. These were the tests to be applied in considering whether or not a part Aboriginal child should be taken from an Aboriginal mother on a settlement or pastoral property. Remember, 1959. And I won't read them all because they're rather lengthy, but if a female, was she promised at birth as the wife of some tribal male? If so, would it create any problems within the tribe if she were taken away? Is it likely, even if taken away, she may subsequently return and accept the obligations of tribal marriage? I'm jumping around here because I don't want to spend too much time on it. Number 2, is the child's habits in manner of life identical with full-blood Aboriginal children with whom he or she is living? Is there any reason to feel that a girl would accept just as readily as a full-blood girl a tribal marriage? Does the mother, this is point 4, and for some reason I've bolded it, does the mother consider that removal is the best interest of the child? Has the mother consulted either her brother or husband on the matter of removal? Is the child old enough to be consciously attached to the family's group, but not old enough to comprehend the possibilities of a new adventure? And then we get down to, and I'm skipping all over here, they ask, and this is a bureaucracy we're told was intent on stealing children, right? They ask for the patrolman in the Northern Territory, how would a child's prospects of employment be better after removal? In the case of a girl, has she better prospects of contracting a happy marriage if removed than she would if she remained? And yeah, so I'll just leave it there. But
the word stolen, you make a very good point. The word stolen is this aggressive interpretation of removing someone for their own good. And you know what? There are examples of this in the Northern Territory today where kids need to be removed from their parents. But of course, we're shit scared to go anywhere near that now, Jim.
I'm glad you said that, Chris. I wasn't going.
I've got to get to a break. We're going to come back and talk more. Plenty to come with Jim Ball on TNT.
At the top of the hour, we'll keep on top of the news.
It's the most important thing we can do.
On today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Let's get back to Jim Ball now. Now, Jim, can I take you back to Wednesday when the Woolies CEO, Brad Beneducci, announced suddenly, out of the blue, that he would resign and depart, and he intends to do that in September, I think the month is. And we know why. He bungled Australia Day arrangements terribly. He disaffected, I think, so many customers, it's not funny. Anyone that I know doesn't shop at Woolies anymore, and I won't go back ever. Although once he goes in September, we'll see what the CEO thinks of Australia Day next January. But this is the history of CEOs, mate, that go woke. It affects the bottom line, and they go out the door.
That's right. Yeah, he basically checked himself out at the express lane. That's what he did.
He did.
Look, the unwritten contract with the consumer of anything, whether it be Woolies and groceries, or whether it's airline tickets or buying a ticket to the football stadium, the unwritten contract is, I'm buying what you're selling. If I want fries with that, I'll ask for it. Thank you very much. But people want to buy what is what they're promised. They don't go to sit in a stadium or go to Woolies to hear. And I think Coles or Woolies are one of them. When the Voice debate was going on, they had things over the internal PA suggesting that people remember to vote yes on the 14th of October. But that willingness to metaphorically sign up and years of customer loyalty and all the rest of it, that doesn't mean the customer can be taken for granted. The one thing that the corporates need to understand, and that is that customer, I hate to say it, is always right.
Yep.
So basically the lesson should be, as they say in basketball, just shut up and dribble. And you notice that all of these, from Qantas and their welcome to country, and the BS acknowledgements, to the sporting arena, to the monopoly on groceries and Woolies, they're all a captive market. You're sitting there, you can't get up and just walk out. You get it whether you want it or not. And so we get to Brad, and then of course incorporate into all of that, you get the pride round for the NRL, whatever round it might be for the rugby. The same thing. You get all of this, all of these political messages coming at you, and to Brad Beneducci, who's, as I said, put himself through the Woolies Express checkout. It's just a late example of what happens when you try and use your capacity as a CEO or a market leader or the corporate boardroom, in the case of airlines or groceries or banking, to force change to fit the politics of your worldview.
Yeah.
And I mean, in America, we had Bud Light, then Target stuff at young kids, all transy sort of stuff. These corporate types seem to have forgotten that it's the customer that's always right. And I use that word force deliberately because what we're talking about is it's a gym term now. It was Karl von Clausewitz who said that war is politics by other means. In other words, we've tried being polite, we've tried diplomacy, hasn't worked. So, we're going to go to a kinetic type war. So this is not about affecting change at the ballot box or by persuasion. This is affecting change. It's about affecting change by the politics of shoving it down your throat. That's what it is, by way of edicts and the strictures of DEI. We've got some banks, I think ANZ, they won't lend for anything associated with coal. It could be NAB, I can't remember. Doesn't matter. But what the hell? Coal is not illegal.
No.
But because this is how what they can't get past politically in Canberra, their proxies in the corporate boardrooms are doing it or trying to do it out in the business world, in the big end of town.
But will they learn? Will they learn?
No, I don't think so. I think that they live in an echo chamber. Yep. They talk to like-minded types.
Yeah.
And as I said, Woolies, Coles, Qantas, shut up and dribble.
Yeah. I was with someone who's a supplier to Woolworths and has had a little bit to do with Brad Beducci. And he said to me yesterday, good luck. Don't hit your head on the way through the door. He wasn't too kind about the way he led Woolworths. But anyway, I want to ask you one more thing. I want to talk about Ukraine, Jim, because, we had the reports during this week that they're being pulverized in so many ways, especially in the front lines. Today, more aid to Ukraine from New Zealand, and Zelensky's praising their new prime minister for doing so. The US is going to send ballistic missiles. We hear today, and I spoke with Ed Martin about that earlier in the program. Has anyone got a plan for a sit down at any stage, at any juncture, for a negotiated compromise?
They had one, Chris, about 3 months after the war started. That was scuttled by Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay? That was scuttled. Now, why? Here they are, everyone's weeping about the deaths in Ukraine. I think when the history books are written, my suspicions will be confirmed that something is seriously off about that war. Why this interest in a reasonably obscure country, thousands of miles away from America? Well, it's regarded as basically a money laundering operation. all of Ukraine. It's regarded as the most corrupt country on earth.
Yeah.
The Bidens were in there making their money. If you look at the history of the George Papadopoulos business, Trump Russia collusion, Ukraine was central to that. I mean, that's like saying Tasmania is the central of all of this stuff, or New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so Ukraine has been central to all of this stuff. And in fact, written before the Ukraine war, Dan Bongino, he wrote a book called Follow the Money. And his opening chapter, now this is before the war, right? So it's not after. The opening chapter is called Insane in Ukraine. That's what it's called. Now, in his book, and I'm just reading a review here, Follow the Money, published 2020, the opening chapter is titled Insane in Ukraine, where Dan Bongino unspools the complex sequence of corruption from the miraculous discovery of a mysterious black ledger that linked transactions to the Trump campaign insider Paul Manafort, all made up. As we dig deeper into the story, Bongino writes, and unravel the corrupt connections surrounding this chaotic country, no description may be offered more accurately than the one the creatures of the DC swamp should have offered under oath. Ukraine is a giant 24-hour ATM broken slot machine that spewed out money to greedy politicos, lobbyists, and yes, the son of the US vice president, which is the Bidens, of course.
I think the future's got to tell the truth. The future will tell the truth.
Oh, yeah. And I think, and this is what, Chris, I've said this to many people. Some of them you would know. I think this is why Trump can't be allowed to get into power. They're not allowed to get his feet under the Resolute desk, because he now knows he's had a trial run for 4 years. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows which people to look out for. He's now surrounded himself by some really brilliant thinkers who also know where the bodies are buried, and they don't want it coming out. And it's not just about Ukraine. This stuff goes back 50, 60 years. You know, the Kennedy assassination, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's shocking. People are going to be shocked when the truth comes out.
I think you're right. I think you're right. That book, Follow the Money, that is really interesting. I might look that up myself sometime over the weekend.
Yeah. And the other one, Big Intel, mate. Just the beauty these days, I love Audible, because I don't have time like most people to sit there and read.
No.
I can go down Woolies aisle 4. I'm driving in the car. Whatever I'm doing.
Your book becomes a podcast.
Yeah, basically. And it's just brilliant. And all of these books now are Big Intel. I'm not sure about the Bongino one, but yeah, Audible, or one of the, I think Apple Books may have an Audible as well, an Audible version of a lot of books. But that's the way to go. People say, I don't like reading and I can't concentrate, or I haven't got time. Well, get the Audible, and then you'll bloody well wake up to yourself and find out what's actually going on in the world.
Yeah, you're a source of great wisdom today, mate. I appreciate your time and your thought.
My wife.
Thanks, Chris. I'll pass it on to her.
See ya.
See you, mate.
Bye.
Jim Ball, the politically incorrect Jim Ball, the former radio nighttime talkback man. Good to have him on the program.